When I was a kid, all I wanted to do was be a writer, and I started off with comics. I would just do these little short stories, kind of based off Captain Underpants, that kind of goofy stuff. And then when I got closer to college, I realized that I wanted to go to college to learn how to be a writer. So I went to this school, Ithaca, and after 2 years, I ended up dropping out because I was just getting all this like talk from friends and family and the media and just everything I would read was just saying that trying to be successful as a writer is like trying to win the lottery. It's just hopeless and it was a waste of time and you're just going to end up as a starving artist and whatnot. Someone who just has this unrealistic dream and never really does anything with it other than making a few small sales. So anyways, I dropped out and then I ended up going back to college for creative advertising, which was like kind of in the same ballpark, but it felt like it was a lot more practical. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was really giving up on myself and this dream that I had. And for years, I kept telling myself that I could kind of like do it on the side. And, because a lot of writers have done that. Like J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter while she was working as a waitress. But it's just like year after year after year after year, I would say that I was going to work on this book that I wanted to write. And then I would never do it. I'd write like a few sentences or a paragraph and then I would give up and I wouldn't come back to it. And then in 2020, I actually did this drawing challenge, 365 Comics, where it was my first book. I didn't even intend to do it. But when I got through with it, I realized this is like as cool as it was, just like all of this artwork, it still wasn't the book that I wanted to write. I always wanted to write either fantasy or sci-fi. And so when I got into YouTubing, I thought finally this will be like the career that will give me enough freedom, working from home, setting my own schedule where I can write. But again, I started YouTubing in 2021 and then here it was, it's like 2025, 4 years later, and I'm still not writing. The only time that I've ever written anything was when I was in the Adirondacks. I think it was a couple years ago, and I had no access to social media or internet or anything like that. And I wrote, I don't know, I think it was probably about like 2 or 3 pages worth, something like that. It was, it was okay. But then I came back and I got distracted by YouTubing again, and then I got distracted by van life. And then it seemed like getting the van was the thing that I would need to start writing, because then I would have this place where I had no distractions and I could control my environment and I felt inspired, because all the decor was like just so the way that it needed to be and whatever. And, maybe I would feel like more confident because I wasn't living at home anymore and I had my own place, etc. But over the past 10 years, it's just felt like one roadblock after another, after another, after another, and, just never writing. And I would always come back to it and try to figure out like, why am I not writing? Like, why don't I just write? Like, I'm a good writer. I've I've written really interesting YouTube scripts. I have phrases here and there where I'm like, I could be the top of the top in terms of the quality of my writing if I could just like get my shit together. And the biggest excuse that I kept coming back to, other than just worrying about like it wouldn't be good enough or that I wouldn't be able to generate ideas, was this idea of like, you kind of have to be a loser to be a writer. I know that sounds weird because like who could look at, J.K. Rowling or Stephen King and think they're a loser because they're hugely successful. They've made millions upon millions of dollars and, are beloved by all of these people. But the thing about writing is that like, why would you write about something if you couldn't just go out into the world and do it? For example, it's like, I don't know, if you're writing a romance book or something, it's like, why would you write about your ideal romance if you could just go out into the world and experience the real thing? So I think in some sense, to be a good writer, you kind of have to be a loser because otherwise you have no motivation to write about this thing that you could otherwise just experience in the real world. And you could say, well, like, what about dragons? Like maybe that's, or, knights going back in history, like maybe that's why people write even though they've experienced a lot of things in the real world. But I don't think that any author really writes because of dragons. I think it's more like how the dragons make them feel. And the only reason why you would need to write about feeling a certain way is because the real world is not making you feel that way. And for the past 10 years, I mean, really my whole life, I just haven't felt the way that I want to feel. And I think realizing that opened this like gateway in my life, because a few days ago I wrote 500 pages. Okay, not that much, but I wrote 500 words. And this is big for me because, like I've said, I've wrote almost nothing in the past 10 years, really my whole life. And then today I woke up and actually had a pretty terrible night of sleep. But for whatever reason, I just got in the zone and I wrote like 1,100 words on this cyberpunk kind of like post-apocalyptic series that I'm working on. And, the idea has been building up in my brain for literally years. I have this file of all these ideas for characters and plot points, and it's just been like a jumble and it hasn't come together, and I just hadn't been able to figure out why until now. And I've realized that it's just like I've finally been able to like let go of the real world and just be a loser. You have to be like a loser in the real world in order to be a winner in the world that you write about. You know what I mean? And what do I mean about being a loser? I just mean that there are problems that you have in your real life that you can't solve, or that are so difficult to solve that they're going to take you a really long time. And so you realize like you just kind of have to like let go of them, especially, or at least in the short term. For example, I haven't been in a relationship for 15 years, and it's another one of those things where year after year I'm like, well, when I get the right clothes, when I get the van, blah 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 blah, like, I'll meet the person, of my dreams or whatever, my soulmate. And that's something that could take a really long time. And so I just kind of had to like let go of that goal. And then also like in my 20s, I lost my hair, my hair started thinning out, so now I'm stuck like in this sort of body that doesn't feel like me because I grew up with long hair always. So I also had to like detach myself from the possibility of ever fixing that problem. And maybe I can. I'm, again, just saying it's sort of about the lack of attachment, rather than you don't stop trying in the real world. It's just like you're not attached to the outcome in the real world, so that it creates a hunger in you where you can write about something better. Like I can write about a character that has the hair that I had when I was a kid. And I can write about a character that, falls in love or goes on adventures when I don't have my van yet and I can't travel and do things that would be as exciting as what my character would do in the book. And like the one defining moment that led to me finally starting to write after like literally decades is I've been working on this van build, and I've made a lot of mistakes, and also it's just hard, like it's hard to save up the money, thousands of dollars every month to invest in, windows and heating source and all of this stuff, on top of like paying for food and everything else. And like, it's just been going so slowly. And then finally, like the final straw was that, because I'm living at home, my mom didn't want me to, get a wood stove, which is what I really wanted to put in the van. And, I kind of felt like I had pushed her too far already with other things that I had done with the van. And even though they worked out, but it's kind of like it was her house, so I didn't want to like cross that line, and I should have, but I didn't listen to my intuition. So I went with the option of getting a propane heater, and I, installed everything. This took like months, because I had to pay like $2,000 to get the heater and the tank and all of the protected copper tubing and the tools. And then I got it all together, after months, and then it just smelled horrible. It smelled like rotten eggs. They have to put this like sulfur stuff in there so that if there's a leak, about it. And it was like tucked under the van. It was really hard to get placed. And I'm like lying on my back trying to like fix a little leak in like the threads because the regulator that I bought is faulty or something. And I'm just like, fuck this, And I just kind of like in a rage, I uninstalled the heater and I boxed it up and I listed it on eBay. And it's just like this moment of bone crushing defeat where my goal of, like getting to the van, which I thought I needed in order to write, had just been postponed again, after just decades of procrastination and postponing and postponing and and being depressed and like all this stuff. And I just finally thought, like, screw this, this is what I've always wanted, is to be a writer. So why not just start writing? Why not like just let go of the timeline that I've set for myself and all the prerequisites that I need in order to just do the thing that I wanted to do all along. And it's kind of depressing because you just think, like, why didn't I just do this in the first place? Like 20 years ago. And I hear people, I've seen videos like this where people are like, just do the thing that you want to do. And I don't know. I guess it's not that easy. I think, like I've said, I think you need to like suffer in order to be a good artist. The suffering just like builds up for a really long time until you have some sort of defining moment where you realize why it is that you need to write. Because I see people all the time who write or make art in sort of like a productivity logical way. Like they'll set a certain amount of pages for themselves that they need to write every day, and they'll just write no matter what. And they might vlog about it or whatever, and then they put the book out and it's just not good. It's not good because they didn't suffer for as long or as much as they needed to suffer in order to write the thing. Like you think about J.K. Rowling, and like one of the greatest authors of all time, and she didn't start until, how old was she? Like in her 40s, I think. And she's working this like dead end waitressing job. She's about to become a teacher and kind of like give up on her dream, or at least maybe not permanently, but she's not going to have a lot of time if she's a teacher to write. And then she gets on this train and she has this insight because she's bored out of her mind on the train, and her brain is squirming because it knows that she's about to give up on her dream for a long time, if not permanently. And I think that's what happened to me, like after this whole propane thing, I just thought, if I don't start working on this now, it's like something's going to happen to me. I'm going to run over by a train and I'm never going to write anything. So anyways, I think the other thing that happened was that I've been on a lot of diets over the course of my life, and nothing has been working. Veganism didn't work. Raw vegan didn't work. Keto didn't work. Pagan diet, high carb, low carb, gluten free, just like pescatarian, literally every single diet. And then recently, the past 4 months, I got onto a raw animal based diet, which is the craziest diet. Or it seems crazy, but apparently it's not, because the energy that I've been getting is just so much better that I have to create things and to write. And I think that was part of it. Like I had to like find my energy source that worked for me. And it's not always easy to do, and it's certainly not the same for everyone. Anyways, it was just crazy today to be in this flow for like 5 hours. I looked at my screen time after I was done writing, and it was like 5 hours, 16 minutes or something that I just sat at the computer and I didn't do anything else. I didn't get distracted by social media. This is like one of the other fears about not writing, as I thought, like, now that social media exists and the internet exists, I'm always going to be too distracted. I'm never going to be able to focus again and go back to this like pure flow that I had as a kid, where I could just sit down and just come up with infinite ideas. And my mind always goes back to this one experience that I had in high school, where I came home and I just had this idea for the beginning of a book, and I sat down and I wrote like 20 pages. I swear to God, I was just writing for like 8 hours straight, and it was the best day of my life. Because the thing about imagination is that it is free. You don't need a $1 million budget to create all of these things in your mind. You can just come up with them. And when you're in a flow, it's just like you see the story emerging in front of you, and it's just the most amazing feeling. And when you really get yourself going, it's genuinely like you're living in that world and you can create whatever world you want without any money at all, which is um, even more freeing and even more minimalist than van life itself. And, I didn't write 20 pages today. I think 1,000 words is generally, it's probably about 4 to 5 pages. But it was higher quality than what I had written in high school because I took the time to like slow down and think about what I was writing. And, you know, it's only really like a skeleton at this point because I need to do a lot of research to make the characters come to life. But the plot is flowing and I was starting to feel again like you know where things are going and all you have to do is write. That's the most amazing feeling because a lot of times for creative people, and the thing that we're most afraid of is the blank page, right? It's sitting there and you write something and maybe it's good or maybe it's not, but then you don't know what to write next. It's like you just, every period you come to, it's just like this blank in your head and it's terrifying and it's exhausting. So when you finally get things worked out and you finally get your why you're writing, the motivation is beating in your heart and the pathway starts to open up, it's just the best feeling. I can't really tell you much about the book because some of the plot points and the characters and things are really unique and I don't want to like blow a blow a Harry Potter, you know what I mean? But the general plot, I would say, and the general vibe is kind of like Fallout but cyberpunk. I feel like I really love the Fallout games, Wasteland, the sort of Mad Max thing, but they're always sort of like set in the past. And I kind of just wanted to make like Game of Thrones, but sci-fi, because we have Star Wars, but no one has ever really written like a sci-fi epic series that just kind of like used every single sci-fi trope, like explored every single nook in sci-fi the way that Game of Thrones does. It's like, or Lord of the Rings too. I don't know why there are all these fantasy epics, but not as many sci-fi epics in terms of books. But anyways, the general plot is sort of like alien invasion gone wrong. Like this alien race shows up and with the intention of terraforming the Earth, to its own specifications, and then the Earthlings launch nukes, at the mothership, like just as it's about to do its terraforming. So it's sort of like creates this hybrid disaster world where everything gets morphed into like weird creatures and humans with mutations and special powers and stuff like that. So I think it's gonna be really fun. There will be like Mad Max elements and also like city cyberpunk elements, like kind of like an Arcane where there's this like magic fuel slash power discovered, and then in a very short amount of time it just changes absolutely everything. I like that about Harry Potter too. There wasn't something that changed everything, but well, the thing that changed everything was like the knowledge that this world exists, and there's this transition from this really boring life that Harry's living into this like magical world where he's discovering all of these things for the first time, and that's one of the most amazing feelings as a creative person, is that feeling of like discovery. Like I always remember in the Elder Scrolls and Fallout games, Bethesda games, like the open world ones, there's always this moment where you're like stuck in a prison or something in the beginning of the game, and then you just emerge like out of a sewer, out of a prison, something like that, into this world where you can do absolutely everything. And it's just, yeah, it's such a cool feeling. But theme wise, the kind of the main character story arc is going to be sort of about ADHD or creativity in general. It's like a character that is just a complete mess in his mind and has to figure out how to make sense of that and make a life out of that and turn it into something positive, meaningful. So yeah, it would be really cool if I could write 1,000 words a day and keep that up. That would be a very ambitious goal. But just honestly, like writing once a week would be a sign that things are really moving in the proper direction in my life, energetically. But long story short, I've accepted the fact that I'm a loser, and it's probably the best realization of my life because now I'm just free to do whatever I want in this world that I want to create. The only problem, and I guess the last remaining fear that I have about writing, and I think a lot of creative people have, is that you might enjoy something so much that you don't want to do what you have to do to make a living anymore, which is YouTubing. Not that I don't enjoy it, but once you get onto the pure crack cocaine of getting into a good writing flow with fiction, it's just like, it just doesn't compare, So I think about like having to make barefoot shoe videos now compared to writing, working on my sci-fi book, and it's going to be difficult, but at least I have something to like keep me going, through the really hard times of the van build and not making progress as fast as I want to. Another thing I want to do is start drawing every day, and I don't think that I have the energy to do another like concept thing like 365 comics where I'm having to come up with like a unique idea every day. But I was at Barnes & Noble the other day, and I was just looking at the drawing section, and I found a good anatomy book. And I thought maybe it would be good to just do like some kind of like logical drawing study every day, So like I could start with drawing human feet of skeletons, then move up to the legs, then draw the hips, and then the rib cage and arms and the head. And then, like in different poses, working on figure drawing. I could just do one of those challenges every day. And I feel like that would just be low enough bandwidth that I could do it on top of everything else, because one of my goals has been to get better at drawing. Like, as you can see, this is about the extent of what I can do. And people like my drawings, and I do too, but I've always just wanted to be better at drawing so that I can like visualize characters, because I feel like that's going to be important once I really start getting into trying to make a deep textured book series where the characters feel like they're alive, and I can visualize what they look like, their body characteristics, how they move and what they wear and stuff like that. And it would just be cool to be able to be better at drawing in, full detail, and not just like slightly better than stick figure things where they don't have the detail that I need to really bring something to life. So anyways, that's what's going on with me. My raw primal diet is really working to many people's horror. Including my mom. It's been 4 months that I've been eating raw meat, raw salmon, raw bison, raw egg yolks, raw dairy, raw butter, raw milk, and she still hasn't gotten used to it. And I think a lot of people on my YouTube channel haven't gotten used to it either, because my subscriber rate has dropped down like by 200. But that's okay. I from the start, I've never really wanted to make a lot of money. I only care about creativity and just having enough money to live and, buy good food. And honestly, now that I've written something worthwhile and the floodgates have sort of opened, it's almost like I said, it's like the lack of attachment. Like, I just don't care if I'm a loser in the real world. I don't care how fast I'm making progress. I don't care about whether I have the van or not. I don't actually need it. It's like today when I was writing, my focus was just so strong. I was just writing hundreds of pages, and things were going on in the house, and like multiple points I was just like leaving the door open, and usually I can't do that, as an introvert. So I think it's like a moment of real power and lack of attachment, lack of need for anything other than just like good food and a roof over my head, and anything else is just like cherry on top. Whereas before, I was feeling like the van was this thing where I had to have it, and I had to have it as soon as possible, and I couldn't be creative without it. So yeah, probably one of the most important eureka moments of my life, I would say. It was a really good day. I would score it like 9 out of 10. If I had slept a little bit better, I was like tossing and turning all night, it probably would have been even better. But I woke up, I went for my walk, I had my raw primal breakfast, which was amazing. And then I just wrote all day long, and I literally just like ran out of time. I had dinner, and then I watched a episode of Severance, which was really cool. And then I made this YouTube video, and I took every single second of today and did something awesome with it. So it's really good. And I hope that you have had a day like that recently, because you don't always get them and they feel really good when you have them. But anyways, thank you guys for hanging out. I'll keep you updated on the writing progress, and yeah, talk to you soon. Peace.